exacerbated. Let's get this ball on the roll, mate. Hi guys, I'm back at you with chapter 2 of Footsteps. Now this next chapter is called Balloons. Like I said on Instagram, I did read ahead. The only reason I read ahead was because when I actually looked at the stories, they were a lot longer than what I thought, and I wanted to make sure it was worth me reading the stories properly and out loud to you, because I don't know whether my voice is entertaining or not to listen to, but the story literally, it gave me shivers, like, and it made me cry, and then I was sad, and then it's a real story. If you commit. Listen to every single one I put up. I'm gonna like make a little bit of a gap between them because I need you guys to process. Like, I read them so fast, then I just sat there for about 2 hours afterwards just processing it all. I'll give you a little kind of like background, but basically this guy starts off his story with footsteps. Now, he never intended to carry on into different chapters. Basically, he just decided, oh, I've got a creepy memory, I'm gonna share it online. So that's what happened. He shared it on this website, which I'll put down below. He then had a lot of interest that he decided, oh, I'll go talk to my mum about it. I'll mention the memory to her. Slowly, chapter by chapter, he starts to find out more and more information from his mum, which is not good information. She withheld a lot of information from her son. He's now 22, and basically you witness him as he goes through the chapters of sharing this story with us. You witness him go through these emotions and these realizations as he discovers that, oh, now that memory I had from when I was a kid was that. Like, it's just mind-blowing. And I do feel sorry for this guy, because what he's now had to deal with 10 years later, when it was all happening around him, he had no idea, and now he's in a state of having to deal with these emotions when everyone else dealt with it 10 years earlier. It is definitely a story worth sticking around for if you do like this type of stuff. It is a real story. It is a bit confronting, so disclaimer, but let's get this ball on the roll, right? Let's get this ball rolling. I mean, that does make sense, ball on the roll, but it's just not what you say. It's not what you say, Ellie. So this next chapter is called Balloons. A couple of days ago, I posted a story called Footsteps here on No Sleep. There were a number of questions that made me curious about certain details about my childhood, and so I spoke to my mother. Exacerbated. A bit frustrated by my questions, she said, why don't you just tell them about the goddamn balloons if they're so interested? As soon as she said that, I remembered so much about my childhood that I'd forgotten. This story will provide a greater context for the previous story, which I think you should read first. We have. We got you. Though the order isn't of vital importance, reading that story first will put you in my place more effectively, since I remembered the events of Footsteps first. Both stories are long, so heads up on that. I'm just a bit hesitant to leave out any details that might be important. When I was 5 years old, I went to an elementary school. We were all set up into themes. The themes were called groups. There was space group, a sea group, an earth group, and the group I was in was community. In kindergarten, in this country, you don't learn much except how to tie your shoes, how to share, so most of it isn't very memorable. I only remember 2 things very clearly. I was the best at writing my name the right way, and the balloon project, which was really the hallmark of the community group. It was a pretty clever way to show how a community functioned at a really basic level. You probably heard of this activity. On one Friday, I remember it being a Friday because I was excited about the project and it being the end of the week. Toward the beginning of the year, we walked into the classroom in the morning and saw that there were fully inflated balloons tied with string taped to each of our desks. Sitting on each of our desks was a marker, a pen, a piece of paper, and an envelope. The project was to write a note on the paper, put it in the envelope, and attach it to the balloon, which we could draw a picture on if we wanted to. Most of the kids started fighting over the balloons because they wanted different colors, but I started on my note, which I thought a lot about. All the notes had to follow a loose structure, but we were allowed to be creative within those boundaries. My note was something like, "Hi, you found my balloon. My name is, and I attend elementary school. You can keep the balloon, but I hope you write me back. I like Mighty Max, exploring building forts, swimming, and friends. What do you like? Write me back soon. Here's $1 for the mail." On the dollar, I wrote 4 stamps right across the front, which my mum said was unnecessary, but I thought it was genius, so I did it. The teacher took a polaroid of each of us with our balloons and had us put it in the envelope along with our letter. They also included another letter that I assume explained the nature of the project, and a sincere appreciation for anyone's participating in writing back and sending photos of their city or neighbourhood. That was the whole idea, to build a sense of community without having to leave the school, and to establish safe contact with the people. It seemed like such a fun idea. Over the next couple of weeks, the letters started to roll in. Most came with pictures of different landmarks, and each time a letter would come in, the teacher would pin the picture up on the big wall map, showing where the letter came from and how the balloon had travelled. It was a really smart idea because we actually looked forward to coming to school to see if we had gotten our letter. For the duration of the year, we had 1 day a week where we could write a letter to our pen pal or another student's pen pal in case our letter didn't come in yet. Mine was one of the last to arrive. When I came into the classroom, I looked at my desk and once again I didn't see a letter waiting for me. But as I sat down, the teacher approached me and handed me an envelope. I must have looked so excited because as I was about to open it, she put her hand on mine to stop me and said, "Please don't be upset." I didn't understand what she meant. Why could I be upset my letter had come? Initially I was mystified that she would even know what was in the envelope. But now I realised that of course the teachers had screened the contents to make sure there was nothing obscene. But all the same, how could I be disappointed? When I opened the envelope, I understood. There was no letter. The only thing in the envelope was a Polaroid, but I couldn't really make out what it was. It looked like a patch of dirt, but it was too blurry to decipher. It appeared as if the camera had been moved while the picture was being taken. There was no return address, so I couldn't even write back if I wanted to. I was absolutely crushed. The school year ended and the letters had stopped coming for nearly all of the other students. After all, you can only continue written correspondence for so long with a kindergartner. Everyone, including myself, had lost interest in the letters almost completely. Then I got another envelope. My excitement was rejuvenated, and I revelled in the fact that I was still getting a letter when most of the other pen pals had abandoned their involvement. It made sense that I received another delivery. There had been nothing but a blurry picture in the first one, so this was probably to make up for it. But again, there was no letter at all, just another picture. This one was more distinguishable, but I still didn't understand it. The photograph was angled way up, catching the top corner of a building, and the rest of the image was distorted by a lens flare from the sun. Because the balloons didn't travel very far, and because they were all launched on the same day, the board became a bit cluttered, and so the policy for the students still exchanging letters became that they could take photographs home. My best friend Josh had the second highest number of pictures taken home by the end of the year. His pen pal was really cooperative and sent him pictures from all around the neighbouring city. Josh took home, I think, 4 pictures. I took home nearly 50. 50 photos? What? The envelopes were all opened by the teacher, but after a while I stopped even looking at the pictures. However, I saved them in one of my drawers that housed my collections of rocks, baseball cards, comic books, marble medal cards for those who might remember, and little miniature baseball batting helmets that I'd get out of the vending machine at Winn-Dixie after T-ball games. With the school year over, my attention turned to other things. My mum had gotten me a small snow cone machine for Christmas. That summer we had the idea that we would set up a snow cone stand to make money. We thought we'd make a fortune selling snow cones at $1. Josh lived in a different neighbourhood, but we eventually decided that my neighbourhood would be better because there were a lot of people who cared for their lawns. The yards in the neighbourhood were slightly bigger. We did this for 5 weekends in a row until my mum told us that we had to stop, and I've only recently come to understand why she did that. On the 5th weekend, Josh and I were counting our money because we both had a machine. We each had a separate stack of money. We put it together in one stack and we split it evenly. We had made a total of $16 that day, and as Josh paid out my 15th dollar, a feeling of profound surprise consumed me. The dollar said, 4 stamps. That's the same dollar from his envelope that he sent out with his balloon. Josh noticed my shop and asked if he had discounted. I told him about the dollar and he said, "That's so cool, man." As I thought about it, I came to agree. The idea that the dollar had made it right back to me after changing so many hands floored me. I rushed inside to tell Mum, but my excitement coupled with her being distracted by a phone call made my story incomprehensible, and she responded simply by saying, "Oh wow, that's neat." Frustrated, I ran back outside and told Josh I had something to show him. Back in my room, I opened the drawer and took out a stack of the envelopes and showed him some of the pictures. I started with the first picture and went through to about 10 before Josh lost interest completely and asked if I wanted to go play in the ditch, a dirt ditch down the street from my house. So that's what we did. We had a dirt wall for a while, but it was interrupted several times by rustling in the woods around us. There were raccoons and stray cats that lived in there, but this was making a little bit too much noise. We traded guesses at what it must be in an attempt to scare each other. My last guess was that it was a mummy, but in the end Josh kept insisting that it was a robot because of the sounds that we heard. Before we left, he got a little serious and looked at me in the eyes and said, "You heard that, didn't you? It sounded like a robot. You heard it too, right?" I had heard it, and since it sounded mechanical, I agreed that it probably was a robot. It's only now that I understand what we heard. When we got back to Josh's mum, waiting for him at the kitchen table with my mum, Josh told his mum about the robot. Our mums laughed and Josh went home. My mum and I ate dinner and then I went to bed. I didn't stay in bed for long before I crept out and decided, due to the day's events, I would revisit the envelopes, since now the whole affair seemed much more interesting. I took the first envelope and set it on the floor and set the blurry Polaroid on top. I laid the second envelope right next to it and placed the oddly angled Polaroid of the building on top, and did this with each picture until I formed a grid that was about 5 by 10. I was always taught to be careful with things that I was collecting, even if I wasn't sure if they were valuable. I noticed that the pictures became more decipherable. There was a tree with a bird on it, a speed limit sign, power line, a group of people walking into some building. Then I saw something that vexed me so powerfully that I can now, as I write this, distinctly remember feeling dizzy and capable of only a single repeating thought. Why am I in this picture? Oh! In this photograph of a group of people entering the building, I saw myself holding hands with my mother in the very back of the crowd. We were at the very edge of the photo, but it was undeniably us. And as my eyes swam over the sea of Polaroids, I became increasingly anxious. It was a really odd feeling. It wasn't fear. It was the feeling you get when you are in trouble. I'm not sure why I was flooded with that feeling, but there I sat, floundering in the distinct sense that I had done something wrong. And this feeling only intensified as I looked on at the rest of the photos after the one that had so powerfully struck me. I was in every photo. None of them were close shots, none of them were only of me, but I was in every single one of them, off to the side, in the back, bottom of the frame. Some of them had only the tiniest part of my face captured at the very edge of the photo, but nevertheless, I was there. I was always there. I didn't know what to do. Your mind works funny ways as a kid, but there was a large part of me that was afraid of getting in trouble simply for still being up, since I already had the looming feeling of having done something wrong. I decided that I would wait until tomorrow. The next day, my mum was off to work and I spent most of the morning cleaning up around the house. I watched cartoons, I imagine, and waited until I thought it was a good time to show her the Polaroids. When she went out to get the mail, I grabbed a couple of the pictures and put them on the table in front of me as I sat waiting for her to come back in. When she returned, she was already opening the mail and threw some junk mail in the trash can, and I said, "Mum, can you come here for a second? I have these pictures. Just give me a minute, honey. I need to mark these on the calendar." After a minute or two, she came and stood behind me and asked me what I needed. I could hear her shuffling with the mail behind me, and I just looked at the Polaroids and told her about them. As I explained more and pointed to pictures, her frequent okay, decreased, and she was suddenly completely quiet and only making a little noise with the mail. The next noise I heard from her sounded as if she was trying to catch her breath in a room that had no air left in it. At last, her struggling gasps were conquered and she simply dropped the remaining mail on the table and ran to the kitchen to get the phone. "Mum, I'm so sorry. I didn't know about these. Don't be mad at me." The phone pressed to her ear as she was walking, running back and forth and shouting into it. I nervously fiddled with the mail sitting next to my Polaroids. The top envelope had something sticking out of it that I thoughtlessly and anxiously pulled on it until it came out. It was another Polaroid. Confused, I thought somehow one of my Polaroids had slipped into the stack when she threw the mail down. But when I turned it over and looked at it, I realized that I had not seen this one before. To my dismay, it was me. But this one was much closer shot. I was surrounded by trees and I was smiling. But it wasn't just me. Josh was there too. This was us from yesterday. I started yelling for Mum, who was still screaming into the phone. I repeatedly yelled to her until she finally responded with, "What?" And I could only think to ask, "Who are you calling?" "I'm talking to the police, honey." "But why? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do anything." She answered me with a response that I never understood until I forced myself to revisit these events from the earliest years of my life. She grabbed the envelope off the table and the picture of Josh and I spun and slid, landing next to the other Polaroids in front of me. She held the envelope up to my eyes. I could only look at her and watch as all of the colour began to draining out of her face. With tears welling up in her eyes, she said that she had to call the police because there was no postmark. So the no postmark means that whoever dropped off that envelope, that freaky envelope with a picture of Josh and him in it, put it in his letterbox. And on top of that, they've taken the photo from them playing in the garden yesterday. So what the heck? Why are schools sending photos of kids out on Polaroids and then also naming which school that kid goes to? It's attracted some psychomaniac. Guys, that is chapter 2 called Balloons. I'm gonna end this here because this is a long video. I hope you stuck through to the end because I remember when I read that I had shivers. Like, I literally was like, what the heck? So if you enjoyed it, please, please, please comment below and let me know. Let me know if you want me to keep going because these are long and I'm not an expert reader. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed and I will be back again very shortly with the next Ellie Fisher Creepy Chronicle. Love you all. Bye.